I'm speaking for Friends of Bute Inlet, an ad hoc citizens group organized for sharing information about Butte and private power in BC. We got started 2 years ago, just before Plutonic and General Electric publicly proposed their Bute Inlet mega project. Sometimes known as FOBI, F-O-B-I, is a diverse network of people united by a place. Our community is gathered from many ethnic groups in all walks of life. We have special local perspectives. We also have an information team from around BC with political, scientific, and practical expertise. So many people have helped, and collectively we raised the profile of Butte. Among us, we've organized public meetings, made presentations, and inspired letter writing campaigns. We guided Bute Inlet summer tours, maintained an excellent information website. We've rallied to support local government, reclaim our voice, and condemn Bill 30. We've participated in high-level panels and campaigned against liberal government energy policies. We helped inform California legislators about poor BC environmental assessments. With local talent, we created YouTubes promoting conservation instead of river diversion. We launched a Bute Inlet Stories campaign, and we're delighted to recommend the Bute Inlet exhibition at the Cortes Island Museum. Check it out. As best we can, we also monitor what's going on. Bute Inlet has become a major provincial issue. It's a monster project that illustrates how big corporations fail communities with broken social contracts, environmental damage, and short-term economics. Locally, Plutonic and its giant multinational partner General Electric have 3 projects, 1 complete, 1 approved, and 1 on hold. Here's an update. Plutonic and GE's just completed East Toba Montrose is now the largest private power source in BC. And the corporations can start collecting their $73 million eco-energy grant from taxpayers via Ottawa. Also just starting is the company's 35-year power purchase agreement from BC Hydro. The guaranteed price is secret, but the impacts are very public. Taxpayers and consumers are going to foot the bill because BC Hydro is paying Plutonic more than the resale value. At Toba Montrose alone, it's estimated that BC Hydro will lose tens of millions, while Plutonic and General Electric anticipate a profit of $26 million. During construction at East Toba Montrose, the company had to hire an independent consultant and file weekly environmental reports. Those somewhat sterilized postings, along with information from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and a few on-the-ground rumors, confirmed many problems. DFO had issue with flood events and road and creek washouts that damaged salmon habitat. From the air, we saw landslides and the inevitable big impacts of logging right-of-way clearings for penstock and transmission lines. Toba is remote. Access is difficult and by permission. And now that construction is complete, government requires environmental reports only once a year. At all power projects, we have reason to wonder what's really going on. Who is watching? And what do they care about? What happens when there's a problem, and who finds out? Toba's had social impacts too. In the beginning, the Powell River community was charmed by promises of jobs and Plutonic's generous contributions to local clubs and charities. Then there was payback. To reduce ongoing liability, Plutonic deactivated the roads they had upgraded for construction. They closed traditional free access to public lands. Despite a year of mediation and promises, Plutonic continues to fail recreation promises in that community. A local mediator told me, with those guys, handshakes don't work. You need everything in writing and get a lawyer. Construction employment is done. At the outset, Plutonic and First Nations leaders forged a non-public but apparently strong relationship. It included money and commitments to First Nation people. Hiring First Nation people. Plutonic built a fine camp at Toba and provided employment for several years. The paychecks were good, although some Clahoos were disappointed because the camp jobs were menial. The crew is now fully laid off, and that's not surprising. Once these power projects go from construction to operational, there's very little employment. Plutonic just disclosed that the ongoing operations crew at Toba Montrose is 3 people, 24/7. That's 1 person per shift. Somehow, Plutonic's second project, Upper Toba, slid through the environmental assessment process with very little public awareness and almost no public comment. Upper Toba diverts 3 creeks, and at least 1 contains upstream fish. When the DFO established an in-stream flow requirement of 20%, meaning Plutonic can only divert 80% of the river into their pipe, Plutonic said that limitation was impossible and economically unviable. They went to Ottawa and lobbied for more water, but the DFO held firm. Then, without explaining, Plutonic suddenly agreed to the unviable flow. So Upper Toba got an environmental certificate, and Plutonic also got 40 years of guaranteed revenue with an energy purchase agreement from BC Hydro. So presumably they're going ahead, but they may also be revising their plans. It's all secret. Even the Environmental Assessment Office has had no communication on this file since March 2009. Plutonic's real fantasy is at Bute Inlet. In January 2009, when Upper Toba was nearing approval, Plutonic and GE proposed Butte. Bigger than Site C, it includes 17 river diversions, 16 powerhouses, a substation, 5 permanent barge landings, and transmission of 1,023 megawatts through 443 kilometers of rugged mountains and coastal forest. This is an all-or-nothing project. At $4 billion, the installation costs are so huge that the corporation needs all the rivers and every proposed megawatt for economic viability. Its hugeness also ignited public concern. To minimize publicity, Plutonic scheduled their required meetings at small community locations on the Sunshine Coast. But this time the public was awake, and we got meetings with amazing turnouts at Campbell River and Quadra. The high level of public interest also generated over 1,000 comments to the Environmental Assessment Office. That was huge. We got heard. And Butte was granted a federal joint review panel. That's the highest level Canadian environmental assessment, and let's keep an eye on that. Plutonic already had engineers and scientists doing studies for Butte for several years. When the final application requirements, called the Terms of Reference, were issued, the field studies continued, but perhaps thanks to challenging terms, in August, Plutonic told the assessment office their environmental reports would be delayed. And in December 2009, they postponed again to 2011. And then last June, they put the whole project on hold, saying they do intend to proceed, but with no timeline. It might have been the fish. In November 2009, there was a good run of coho at Butte, and many fish were documented upriver of Plutonic's diversion sites. Since those fish returns, Plutonic has been completely absent at Butte. Employment ended for the Hamalco First Nation, and beds are empty at Hamathco Camp. No one knows what the company is thinking or planning. The environmental and engineering challenges at Toba show what's inevitable and then some at Butte. Maybe Plutonic is becoming properly intimidated by Butte's massive, rugged terrain, the shifting rivers, the wild weather. And astronomical costs. Toba went way over budget. Another problem is Plutonic has no market for its Butte power. They have no cushy contract with BC Hydro. And it's most likely smaller power projects will win near future contracts, near future purchase agreements. California plays a part in this scene. Their environmental standards make mockery of BC's environmental assessments. What's green in BC is brown in CA. Gordon Campbell's green energy export market is another fantasy. That's all my news about Plutonic and GE in our backyard. The quiet is a breather, and it might bode well, but we should stay on guard. In our times, energy is as seductive as gold, and there are plenty more projects out there. Phoebe does have one action underway, That's an attempt to maintain the Joint Review Panel for Butte. As we've just seen with Prosperity Mine at Fish Lake, federal environmental assessments look deeper at real environmental effects than do BC assessments, which are too often affected by money-driven policies. We think the Butte Joint Review Panel is safe until January, but to keep it after that, we may need to raise our voices. I want to thank so many of you for helping, for showing up to meetings and events, for your many wonderful efforts, for being part of the public pressure that's helped put Plutonic and GE on hold. So let's celebrate community as we stay on guard for wild rivers and wild salmon. And here's the people power.